So make sure you check it out. Right. Shall we get this thing rolling? Raph,
baby.
tech priest behind the scenes, is going to hit the first reveal.
C'est parti! Ok, 40K. 40K en portant. 40K.
The Imperium is dying. Worlds of metal and turning wheels. Countless lives bound in chains of lies. United by one certainty. All shall fall and wither
Wag.
decay. And now, by the will of Abaddon,
Oh, c'est
our
chaos.
War Master, I shall be the herald of that truth. The stars of Charadon shall weep.
Dead guard.
The machines
Dead
of
guard.
Metallica shall rot. And when their forges are cold, and their flesh calls out for mercy, I will be there
Mortarion.
to welcome them.
Rust and Rot. C'est probablement une nouvelle boîte.
That was awesome. So, what on earth did we just see? What can you tell us, Eddie?
Absolutely, Adam. So this is the next big narrative jump for Warhammer 40,000. We are into a new edition, as we know, and we've seen a lot of
Mechanicus versus Dead Guard, ouais,
stuff going on in the Pariah Nexus, but that is far from the only danger that the Imperium faces right now. As we know, Chaos is the ever-present threat in the Warhammer 40,000 universe, and they have certainly not been sitting around waiting to do nothing. They have been planning their next invasions, and one of those key invasions is going to see the Death Guard with Typhus at its head in the Terminus Est, sent by Abaddon to try and conquer a key Forge world within the Imperium. This is one of the named worlds. It's the world of Metallica in the Charadon sector. So this is basically the war for Metallica and the surrounding systems. So this is the first book. It's called Warzone Charadon, and this is Act 1, which would give you the indication that this might not be the only act that we see of this particular Warzone. But this is a huge, chunky narrative book with loads of story in there. There's some new rules, and it explores this major new flashpoint
l'édition vient de sortir, puis ils ont déjà des camping books avec des nouvelles règles. Quoi qu'ils n'ont pas encore de Battle Tome, right? Pour 40K, ils n'ont pas toutes leurs Battle Tome.
40,000 for 30 years now, and one of the things that people always ask is, what will happen to the narrative? Will we ever see the narrative progress? And I think the Warhammer studio have really grasped that nettle and are telling awesome new stories within the 40k universe that are helping us see the universe differently and understand things differently as the sort of the landscape changes. So you mentioned that they were going to be fighting on Metallica, is that right?
Yeah, so Metallica is one of the primary Forge worlds of the Imperium. I mean, second probably to Mars. There's like a few Forge worlds that most 40,000 fans can name, and other than Mars, Metallica is one of the ones that most people could probably name.
Absolutely so.
It is a very important Forge world. It's been part of the Imperium since the time of the
Sad
Horus
but
Heresy.
true.
It's got a history that stretches way back. It obviously has its own unique rules. You can represent your army as a Metallica force, its own unique color scheme. But we haven't really seen any battles take place in and around that before. And a Forge world is obviously a huge prize for any faction that can claim it. There are vast amounts of resources there.
Seek and Destroy. Je pense que la liste est longue de puns qu'on pourrait faire avec le nom des tunes de Metallica.
And this is very much what the Chaos are playing for. They're going to try and claim this Forge world, corrupt it. They have some nefarious
Stormcast, c'est sûr que quand ils se pointent sur le battlefield, c'est Ride the Lightning. Ça, c'est 100% confirmed. Ride the Lightning.
40,000 narrative is that stakes are huge, right? This is a planet. This is a huge win if Chaos can get it. And we know from the past with things like Cadian Warzone that, you know, the baddies can win. This is one of those ones where you're like, this really is on a knife edge. We don't know how this is going to go. This isn't a foregone conclusion. The Imperium's going to come out on top.
Est-ce que c'est ce qu'on s'attendait pour du Dead Guard, ou si on s'attendait à avoir un Battle Tome? Ils ont-tu déjà eu leur Battle Tome?
It's not just
c'est quoi les autres?
That's the thing I'm most excited about. But there are implications for collectors of different factions as well, aren't there?
That's quite true. So much like we saw with the Vigilus books, and I think this is a good way to understand what this book is. It's very similar to the way that Vigilus was presented, a key war zone that people are fighting over, but it also brings with it new rules for a range of different factions. So you saw some of them hinted at in that video we saw. So obviously there will be stuff for the Death Guard, some kind of plaguey stuff to sink their teeth into, specifically around Typhus and his faction. But you've also got stuff from the Imperium perspective where you have the forces of Metallica itself.
C'est le premier qui sortait à 40K ou presque qui est rendu vieux.
There are things for the rules for Imperial Knights.
Codex est déjà annoncé, je pense.
We talked a little bit about this before the show, Adam, that we're quite excited about the Imperial Knights.
40K, je suis vraiment pas sûr. Donc, vous en savez plus que moi. Vous en savez plus que moi. Avec leur nouveau four à pizza, ça je l'ai vu. Ça je l'ai vu. Four à pizza. Ils rivalisent même le four à pizza des Fire Slayers.
Get their raiding done, gather some resources, which usually means slaves and victims mostly for them. So there's a little bit of stuff for everybody, and I think it's cool as well because it's a very different place than what we've seen at the start of this edition, which was very much the Pariah Nexus and Necrons fighting Ultramarines. Those factions aren't present in this. This is another corner of Warhammer 40,000, but one that's no less pivotal.
Yeah, and that video gave us a really strong indicator of the factions that are obviously going to be there. You've mentioned Imperial Knights, Adeptus Mechanicus. In the video, we see there are some Space Marines present, although not Ultramarines. And obviously, you've got Black Legion and Death Guard involved in it by the look of what we saw there. So I'm quite interested to see how it unfolds. And we see different factions fight over. Essentially, one of the most, if you were to label the world in terms of their value to the Imperium after Terror, you probably have to start name-dropping 412s.
Definitely. I think 412s obviously have an interesting, complex relationship with the rest of the Imperium. They are ruled by the Adeptus Mechanicus, which obviously are a kind of empire apart from the rest of the Imperium, but they are absolutely crucial to the workings and war machine of the rest of the Imperium of Man. They make the weapons, they make the bullets, they make the engines of war, they supply the armies of the Imperium with all of the things that make the armies turn over. And if you can make a Forge World fall, that is a sizable dent in whatever corner of the Imperium was relying on it.
I agree. Nice. So I guess we should talk about the other thing which accompanies this.
Fait timeout par Nightbot.
There we go. So alongside
Tony got wrecked by Nightbot.
We also have Crusade Mission Pack Plague Purge.
Je pense que t'as spammé trop de symboles.
Yeah, so Crusade obviously is a new part of Warhammer 40,000 that launched with this new edition that we're now in. And Crusade has been hugely popular. This is a way to play narrative games of Warhammer 40,000 that link up together. You can take your army to different war zones, fighting its different opponents, earn experience, expand your force. And this is another place, another expansion for Crusade specifically. So what this gives you is loads of missions. It gives you lots of Crusade content that you can earn, and effectively this is a themed around the Sharadan War. But you can apply this to any army in Warhammer 40,000. So if you want your force of Orcs or your force of Tau or your force of Dark Angels to join in this the battle in this sphere, you can play Crusade games and earn relics that you could not otherwise earn.
So you've got all these kind of
corrupted Chaos artifacts, but also
encore des bold statements ce matin.
Bits and bobs and
encore des bold statements.
Different ways to play. But if you have a Death Guard force or a Nurgle force, this is incredibly thematic because it basically gives you a whole book of ways that your Nurgle force can be trying to infect and corrupt planets. So particularly for Chaos players and Nurgle players, this is a really good book, but you can use it for, if you play Crusade games of Warhammer 40,000, this is full of good stuff. It's very similar to the book that we saw, Beyond the Veil, which was set within the Pariah Nexus. So if you think that book was set Pariah Nexus themed, but had stuff for everybody, this is similar, but set within this new war zone in Charadan and around.
Le Nightbot est efficace, ça peut pas être
I think it's probably worth us moving on.
Ses oreilles doivent filer en ce
We've
moment.
talked about the awesome new book of Rust and its accompanying sort of Crusade campaign material. But that's not the only thing new for 40k on the near horizon. I think Raph is about to show us perhaps the most glorious slide in the history of all slides ever created. This is like a journey through your and my, Eddie, like hobby life. These are all the Dark Angels codexes that have existed. And you can see on the right-hand side of your screen, that is the cover of the forthcoming Codex Supplement Dark Angels.
Yeah, so I think for me a great slide because I think we were saying before, but the very first thing I ever had as a book about Warhammer 40,000 was the Angels of Death. Even before I owned copies of the rulebook or understood how it fitted into the wider lore or anything like that, and I just had the book.
J'ai les 3 premiers.
Ils ont
repris la même image pour.
That was very much the start of my Warhammer 40,000 journey. So this is, that represents like my in, I guess, to this cool, awesome universe.
Codex,
and then
Codex,
I think both of us have been, Dark Angels fans pretty much since that book, I'd imagine.
Yeah, absolutely. So I vividly remember Codex Angels of Death dropping and sitting with my good friend Alex at the time and just reading it together, for hours on end and soaking up the lore and arguing
Angels
over which was better. He liked the Blood
début.
Angels better than the Dark Angels. And for me, it really has begun.
Mais c'est-tu un codex qui sort au complet ou?
Dark Angels.
C'est marqué supplément.
And each of these codexes along the way
supplement.
has something really, sort of nice for me in my heart.
C'est le nouveau nom des codex ou c'est juste que ça sera pas un codex en tant que tel qui vient...
ever of any codex, but I genuinely believe
Angels of Death, c'était Blood et Dark
when you get a
Angels.
chance to see it in full glory, it is outstanding.
Ah
of
oui,
course,
oui, c'est Blood
you cannot judge a
Angels,
book by
Dark
its cover
Angels, Space
alone.
Marines.
What can you tell us about what you're going
là,
to
vous
find
voyez pas dans
inside
l'écran, mais moi je le vois en bas.
Yeah, so the Codex Dark Angels, the expansion for Codex Space Marines for Dark Angels has loads of good stuff in it. As you'd imagine, as we've started to see with things like Space Wolves and Death Watch, the Dark Angel one has a bunch of angles that I suppose are unexpected, but are kind of very exciting if you're a Dark Angel fan. So first and foremost, there's lots of Crusade content in there that gives you loads of interesting ways to play your Dark Angel army over a course of several games. And one of the ones that's probably the most thematic is this one, which is Interrogation. So effectively, if you can find somebody who's got a force of fallen angels, I have a force of fallen angels, Adam, if you wanted to play some games. I'm more than happy to.
I'm happy to put them down for you.
Basically, if you can defeat one of those units in your game, you can take one captive and then interrogate them and effectively unlock a bunch of abilities for your interrogator chaplain. One of the things we know about the Dark Angels and their interrogator chaplains is that actually capturing one of the fallen is incredibly rare. So it's almost unheard of. Most interrogator chaplains may never get the chance to interrogate a fallen in their entire duty. And even the most famed, I think, have maybe interrogated 10.
Yeah.
But if they do manage to catch one of the fallen, you can interrogate them, you can kind of have them repent, and if you are successful in that, you can add a black bead, a black pearl to your accoutrements. So this represents that. Been part of the lore forever, never really been represented in the game, and Crusade now gives it a perfect chance.
On garde le meilleur stock pour la fin.
I think that's a really good example.
Désolé si j'offense des fans de 40K. Là.
At the heart, Dark Angels
vous êtes les bienvenus quand même, mais on est plus...
on
est plus Age of Sigmar ici, en tout cas personnellement. Mais j'ai rien contre 40K.
But they have this awesome narrative thread beneath the surface, which is their secret mission and their secret agenda, and that plays out particularly in Crusade games with these fantastic mechanics. And as you look through the different other special rules, warlord traits and things like that, you can see hints of it, and so it adds flavor to, but does not dominate their narrative for your own army. And I think that's really elegantly done in this book.
Yeah, there's a couple of other things in there as well that are worth calling out. So one of the things that's defined the Dark Angels for a very long time is their unique first and second company. And there are lots of things in the new Codex expansion about if you want a Raven Wing heavy force or if you want a Death Wing heavy force, there's lots of things that you can do with your army to represent that. Unique warlord traits, change around some of the stratagems and things, and the way those two forces either work alone or work together or work as part of a wider Dark Angels force. So all of the options you would expect have been, I suppose, expanded, and this is the most complete and comprehensive book that Dark Angels players have ever had.
Yeah, and I'm super, super excited. However, we can't talk about Dark Angels forever. We should probably
can't.
Have a look at what else is coming in terms of new codexes for Warhammer 40,000. Of course, the many fans of the non-Imperial factions have been calling out for their codexes, and Drukhari are about to get their day in the sun.
Yeah, so coming early in 2021, we have Codex Drukhari, and this is the second Xenos Codex for the new edition. Obviously, we had Necrons alongside Space Marines with the launch of Indomitus, and now Drukhari get their chance to shine. And as we've seen with the other codexes, that have come out this edition, we are going to see a huge amount of changes to this. This is definitely not a new cover on the old codex with the new logo on. This book has been fundamentally reworked from the ground up. A lot of your units in your army will have changes, will be more effective, will work more thematically, and obviously there is a huge amount of Crusade content in this as well for Drukhari players to sink their teeth into.
Yeah, absolutely. We were talking a little bit about one of there's a lot of changes, I think it's fair to say, and you've mentioned so, but we talked a little bit about one of the major changes, and I think Raf has a slide locked and loaded for us. So incubi have always been considered in the lore to be some of the sort of preeminent close combat killers in Warhammer 40,000, and here we see that they've been given a serious bump to make them exactly that on the tabletop.
Yeah, so just a cursory glance, you'll notice that weapon skill 2+, almost unheard of for a non-character unit in Warhammer 40,000. So these guys are going to be hitting you on a 2+. You can now see that their demi-claves and blades are
merci
damaged
Fox Dark pour le follow.
Which is pretty terrifying.
C'est pas très excitant à date, mais merci pour le follow. Dans le sens que je parle pas beaucoup, mais c'est 40K.
They can take the hits pretty well.
J'ai moins de choses à dire.
Not against Incubi. Incubi are going to go into a space marine and they're just going to rip them to shreds. So you can see that they've got 3 attacks each basic, going to be hitting on a 2+, wounding you on a 3, and very little save. So they're going to slice through anything short of a Custodes in.
On va jaser plus, mais que le stuff.
Keeping these at arm's length
Age of Sigmar soft.
And this is only an indicator of the sorts of changes and the sorts of innovation that have gone into this new codex at the hands of the Warhammer Studio. I know they're working extremely hard along with a brilliant core of playtesters to really innovate and carefully and lovingly curate the rules as they move forward. And I'm excited to see the elite combat units of the Drukhari. Sorry, I nearly went old school.
J'espère qu'ils vont sortir de quoi de cool pour Slanesh pour mon frère, parce que les Hellstriders sont même plus Battleland.
And this is, we saw this with the Necrons already. Like if you
ouais, je savais pas qu'ils avaient changé les Hellstriders.
Compared to the previous incarnation,
ils sont plus
loads of
Battleland.
those units are near unrecognizable.
Salut de France, Fox Dark, eh bien bonjour,
what should it do on the battlefield? If it comes up against a horde of guardsmen, what would be the outcome? If it comes up against a space marine, who would win that fight? And the stat lines really reflect that. So Incubi are absolutely just going to blend through elite enemy units on the opposing army, and the same goes for lots of different weapons and units and things. I think almost every infantry
c'est ça le gros preview de 40K. J'ai pas tant d'espoir pour de quoi de earth-shattering pour Age of Sigmar.
Most of them to become more lethal.
En même temps, ça sera pas.
It's going to be a good day for Drukhari players when this codex drops.
Au moins, ils ont pas annoncé ce preview-là en disant que ça allait être le plus gros preview ever. Comme les previews qu'on a eu par le passé, puis finalement, on avait tellement pas grand-chose dans les previews. Donc, au moins, on peut peut-être un peu plus manage nos expectations là, avec tout ça. Mais bon.
So who knows?
Yeah, and the miniatures are phenomenal, right? I think
c'est quoi à date 40K? Ils ont montré 3 livres.
Reinvention of the Drukhari over the past, I think.
Ils ont montré le truc de Metallica tantôt, ils ont montré le Plague Missions, puis le Codex Decay.
Just look incredible, I think. It's been a shame that some of them haven't performed on the tabletop as well as maybe.
Donc pas de modèle pour 40K.
The new codex will open up lots of opportunities for people to use the models that they want to.
Pas de modèle.
And make effective armies in lots of different ways. One of the other things that's worth calling out about the way the Drukhari army is going to work is it struggled a little bit in the last edition with the way that its army composition
déjà
works.
Sur les nouveaux modèles
Age of Sigmar, you had to have like a patrol
on
of
va déjà avoir un meilleur
warriors and a patrol of witches and a patrol
of
modèles,
c'est toujours le best.
Stuff and smush them together, and it didn't quite work as you kind of imagined it would. So there is a new army building mechanic within the Drukhari Codex, which basically lets you take a real space raid. And what that does is you go, right, this is the Archon who's in charge of the raid, and then you can have a mix of all sorts of different stuff mixed in, so you can have some witches and some grotesques and some warriors and all sorts of things. And it works as an army without losing lots of your army bonuses, which is one of the things that makes your army kind of flavorful and thematic. So it lets you do the army that you wanted to do without having to kind of fit it awkwardly into lots of different weird detachments, which obviously in the new edition of Warhammer 40,000 would penalise you with less command points to start your game.
Dans le chat.
Awesome. Right, so we have enthused about Warhammer 40,000 for
subscriber only
I'm
chat.
excited by everything. Dark Angel's clearly the best thing ever, but Book of Rust is looking great. We're getting new codex supplement for the Dark Angels, and the Drukhari are going to get their time in the sun.
All right,
we need to go to our next reveal video, and then we'll be right back after this.
Let's go. Necromunda, ça? Ouh. Le shield est quand même très cool. Prends ça relax, il y a du stock à passer. Ouais, je sais, j'ai juste hâte de passer à du stock plus intéressant pour vous et pour moi, là, pour qu'on puisse jaser. Necromunda.
Cool. So, new stuff for Necromunda. Adam, what did we just see?
I'm so glad you asked, and the reason for that is that it's been a wicked time for Necromunda just recently with the Book of series. Essentially, you've had the the House of Iron, you've had the House of Chains, and so now the most technologically advanced house in Necromunda out of the gang houses gets its day in the sun. And then, so here we have House Van Saar, so it's the House of Artifice. And as you've just seen, there's a whole suite of cool new stuff coming for the Van Saar house. If you're not fully entrenched in Necromunda lore, each of the different houses has a sort of an archetype that defines it. Van Saar, which
le modèle avec le shield, là, il était quand même très cool.
Advanced. They have a stranglehold on a lot of the technology and the equipment that makes the Necromunda hives operate, and they are heavily involved in the creation and construction and distribution of some very advanced weaponry and equipment. And you see a little bit of a glimpse of that in the video that we just showed. So this book will not only give you the rules for all those new models, but it will also give you more lore than we've ever had before on House Van Saar, which is very exciting. There's a lot of tension in Necromunda between these gang houses. They're sort of the puppets used by the mighty powers within the Necromunda higher government to fight their little internecine wars, and the foot soldiers of that are the gangers that you see within the different Necromunda gangs. So we've already got a Van Saar gang, and now we're going to get some additional reinforcements with those new multi-part miniatures that we saw in the video. So maybe if Raf flips us across those, I can talk a little bit about these. So we saw two different types of unit really featured in that video. These are outstanding. The team that are making the Necromunda stuff in the Warhammer studio are just continuing to blow all expectations out of the water with the creativity that they're using. What you see here are Archaeotechs, and the new kit that's coming contains two of them. Archaeotechs are champion level fighters for a Van Saar gang, so they have the very best kit and equipment available to the gang with the best level of technology. So as you can expect, these are fantastic on the tabletop. It's worth noting that Van Saar are not the strongest. Each of the houses is so essentially that, there are traits that you can find typical throughout them. Van Saar are relatively mortal compared to, say, the mighty Goliaths or all stim enhanced or whatever, and so they rely on high firepower and armor to survive, whereas brute force and ignorance will see some of the other gangs through. What is there to say about these? They're wearing much heavier armor than your ordinary gangers, even heavier than the run-of-the-mill Van Saars, and they just have fantastic equipment. They got things like all he says, and then I'm having to dredge my memory for it.
Talking in front of several thousand people. One of the things I'm really liking about the Madam is that a lot of the technology on there is like it's a little bit unusual from a Warhammer 40,000 perspective, but you can start to see little hints about where it taps into maybe some of the Mechanica stuff or some of the other things we've seen. So there's a little bit of ambot about the face there of the Archaeotechs that kind of hints that maybe they were involved in the creation of that. I think an ambot would sit perfectly alongside these if you wanted to add one into your force. But there's a lot of things that are like are really weird and wacky and unusual.
There's a very insectile feel to them, and that's actually borne out the rig that they've got. It's called a spider rig.
Je vois la ressemblance, surtout avec la main droite.
Almost
mais
redolent
lui, il a les deux
like
mains,
the mechadendrites that you see on the Adeptus Mechanicus, but with a different flavor. I'm not sure all is completely above board in the way that the...
You think there might be some Xenos influence creeping into these a little bit?
I don't want to throw too much shade. All I'm saying is that I'm not sure you can completely trust them. And so one of the weapons you see there is the Rad Beamer, which is connected via all those pipes. It's the fellow on the left. Anybody that's using radiation as a weapon is clearly up to no good. And that sort of connection with radiation and sort of illicit technology is one of the things which is a hallmark of why the Vansars are the way they are. They're a little bit pasted, a little bit ill, but they got the best guns, so who can blame them? The other thing that we saw in that video, and if we go over to it, we can talk about it. These are grav cutters. We've seen in the different plastic kits that have come out for the gangs in the House of series that we're often getting some new fighter types entirely. These are called Neotechs, and they are sort of super young, impetuous Vansars who essentially it's like my first technology. And that's evidenced in these awesome grav skiffs that they ride around in. They've got energy shields, and they're going to be extremely fast and mobile. If you imagine playing those multi-level games of Necromunda, where being able to move around the board quickly and safely is so important. I think you're going to find Vansars have a new advantage on the tabletop with these.
Cool.
And they look super cool. Check out all those different heads, with the shaved side cuts and stuff. I think they're going to be plundered all over for the bits.
I think it's a really fun juxtaposition between these guys and the Archaeotechs, because I think in the Archaeotechs what you effectively have is experienced gangers who understand the technology they're using perhaps a bit more, and they've kind of selected the most reliable, most kind of advanced tech, and you can imagine them sort of wading forward, kind of methodically blasting firepower at anything that appears. And these Juves, you could imagine going like, right, I've got some tech, I can make a thing fly. All I want in life is to zip around the Underhive on some kind of weird techno flying machine. You can imagine kind of whooping and cheering and blasting pistols in a very kind of ill-disciplined sort of way.
Peut-être bien, oui. Garde le meilleur pour la fin.
I think something that's worth noting is the Neotechs are out to prove themselves. A little bit like, if you remember classic Necromunda, there would be the rank of Juve, and that would be the sort of the younger aspirants to a gang who are looking to prove themselves. That's very much the case with the Neotechs. So they're willing to go for the most dangerous jobs, use the least reliable kit, anything they can do to sort of propel them up the gang structure and sort of earn their place in the sort of fighting gang houses of Necromunda.
It's des joueurs de Necromunda dans le chat.
Like,
yeah, it really does.
If you're in Necromunda,
it's fun comme jeu de Necromunda.
You'd be like, yeah, of course I do.
So there's a comment in the chat which I think is really interesting. It says, Departamento Immunitorum needs to pull the finger out. The Guard is nothing approaching this, not even the Tempest of Science. And I think that's a hallmark of how secretive and dubious House Vansar really is. That they have access to STCs or technology or innovation, which is clearly not shared across the Imperium. And you look at the sort of reliable but utilitarian nature of the guns used by
C'est ce qui m'a amené à Games Workshop dans les années 98.
House Cawdor, and then here
held together with bits of rap.
J'ai pas joué nouvelle version, mais j'avais capoté sur l'original back in the days.
Vansar with hoverboards, and I like that the Warhammer studio are delving into that lore. And imagine what must happen in these big gang fights. As like solid round stubbers and stuff are blazing away, and then a bunch of Neotechs sort of swoop in on howling skips with plasma pistols. Probably doesn't feel great.
There's an interesting thing there as well about the relationship with the Adeptus Mechanicus as well, isn't it? Because we know the Adeptus Mechanicus is very prized knowledge, and that they don't let any kind of technology fly, literally, unless it's kind of been tested for 10,000 years and gone through the rigorous machine coding. It doesn't look like the Vansar really complying.
On a eu que du 40K, et là c'était Necromunda, donc on n'a rien encore pour Age of Sigmar, donc t'es pas en retard.
The AdMech have this, they don't. It isn't authorized.
T'es pas en retard, on attend.
One way or another, this is definitely not kosher.
Yeah, and it's definitely not safe. The Vansar house are very ill, and some of that is because the technology they're using is not.
C'est juste qu'à 15 ans, tu avais un shitload de temps, 37 et 2 enfants, on peut pas jouer à tout.
If you want more of this, I think the background that defines each of these houses.
C'était quoi 40K? Ouais, c'était ça, c'était 3 livres. Là. Il y a eu
loaded with all the cool lore that you could look
un genre de livre de campagne.
and this is just a great time
Guard
for
contre
Necromunda has a huge fan base. It's always really popular.
Plague Mission, ça s'appelait, puis il y a eu Codex Drukhari. Ah oui, puis Dark Angel, c'est vrai.
It's an interesting thing there about like kind of what's wrong with
the supplément Codex de Dark Angels.
Their flaws. A lot of the thing that makes Necromunda and almost all of
Warhammer,
a lot of the factions are defined by their weaknesses, whether that's like moral or corrupt in some way. There isn't really a faction anywhere in Warhammer where you're like, yep, across the board, these guys have played it right. That definitely do all the moral things and have no flaws and no creeping secrets or anything like that. It's the things that make them, it's their flaws and their taints that make these gangs compelling, I think.
I totally agree. So that is, in a nutshell, I guess I'll update for Necromunda with the House of Artifice, the Middle Earth conglomerate. I've seen a few of you chatting away in the chat, asking when you're going to get to see something.
Alex avec le hate speech.
Getting the next reveal. We'll see you on the other side.
Oh, next reveal. Middle Earth, Lord of the Rings. Entish, ah ouais, des Ent. Nice. Conversion pour un Tree Lord. Conversion pour un Tree Lord. Pépine. Marine. Nice. Treebeard, Mighty Ent. Nice.
So, Adam, it's been a very long time coming. What did we just see?
Well, it's good not to be too hasty when it comes to Ents. We just saw the brand new multi-part plastic Treebeard kit created at the hands of the incredible fellows in the Middle-earth team in the Warhammer studio. When I caught wind that this was happening, I had the opportunity to sneak down and have a peek over the shoulder of the designer, Gavin Newton, and see it coming along. And see the finished thing on your
Lord of the
screen
Rings
with Merry and Pippin. It's just
20 minutes sur 3
awesome.
livres de
It's
40K,
such
mais bon.
a good-looking kit. And long
Mais le modèle était vraiment hot, là.
It's been quite exciting watching them
avec Mérin
speculate on what they might get. You know, when
Pépin
they
qui sont
saw
sur le dessus en train de lancer les roches comme dans le film.
Previews for this preview. And I am delighted to say that it's one of the biggest heroes in Middle-earth, Treebeard.
Yeah, literally one of the biggest heroes. Like,
yeah, absolutely.
I think I remember the original Treebeard miniature coming out. It must be almost 2 decades ago at this point. Even at the time, I was like, that is an amazing.
Tree Lord avec
this
un
one
range
is,
attack.
you know, it's better. It's plastic. It's got options.
Nice.
It's everything you want this model to be.
Yeah, so I think it's fair to say in everything they do that the Middle-earth team stand on the shoulders of giants. They and Treebeard is a great example of that. That original Treebeard model blew me away when it came out. But we are talking about the better part of 20 years ago, and since then our plastic
Tree Lord ancient parce qu'il est vieux avec sa barbe.
So very well that they're able to build upon a classic kit and create this. So what you see here on the screen, if you're wondering what on earth this is, if you've seen the Lord of the Rings
le modèle est vraiment beau,
trilogy,
mais on peut
but you have Treebeard, who is the mightiest Ent there is.
Adeptus 6 qui est encore plus
hero in the books and the film, but also he's a massive power on the tabletop, and he's accompanied by the two hobbits, Merry and Pippin. The kit contains the option to have them ride on his shoulders as well. So it's a both and. You don't build either the guys or the guys on his shoulders. You get both, which is incredibly cool for the tabletop game, because one of the things that they can do in the rules, quite unlike most things in match play games for Middle-earth, is they can dismount as he's going along. And I've seen people use Treebeard to noodle along to an objective, and then off jumps Merry or Pippin to take the objective, and Treebeard goes on to clobber something. It's just super fun. It's one of those kits which is going to be extremely enjoyable for the collectors. There's a lot of Middle-earth fans out there who just like collecting their favorite heroes. Then there's the ones who want to recreate their favorite scenes. You know, those narrative gamers who are able to
Moi, je pense que les mécaniques du jeu sont quand même cool.
Scenes and battles and fights from things they want. If you want to do Last March of the Ents, get some of the plastic Ents, get Treebeard.
Pour n'importe quel gros fan de Lord of the Rings, c'est super. Avec les nouveaux modèles qui sortent, là, c'est hot.
In matched play, I've seen a number of people use Ents at tournaments to pretty great effect.
Beau modèle pour du lumineux.
And I think relatively unheralded. I couldn't help myself. I was watching the Middle-earth guys speculate all week on what it might be, and a few of them sort of branched out.
Prends des notes, Alex. Prends des notes.
What the question was going to be, and they wouldn't. No leaf was left unturned as they went right into the heart of Treebeard. I'm just super excited.
I think that the miniature is incredible as well. I think one of the things that's really nice about Middle-earth and Lord of the Rings is that even almost 20 years on, those films hold up as some of the best fantasy films ever made, and just creating some of those characters on the tabletop and replaying those scenes is great. But that model is incredible. Like the beard, obviously that's what it was named for.
The beard,
but it's got detail, it's got moss, it's got like little bits of leaves in it. Even though like at a distance you kind of go, well, it's clearly a big impressive model, but as soon as you start to look in a bit more detail, you're like, well, actually this is an incredibly detailed thematic true representation of the character that we saw on the screen. One of the things I thought was pretty cool when this kit was being described to me is that Merry and Pippin, the miniatures, are ever so slightly taller than the other Hobbit miniatures that we've released, and there's a really good reason for that, isn't there, Adam?
Yes, well, of course, if you've seen the extended version of the Two Towers, or if you have familiarity with the books, you'll know that while they're in
dis-moi bientôt l'entretien, ok? C'est sûr, il faut que tu enlèves toutes les branches, toutes les feuilles à travers.
So tall and healthy, and so they do grow ever so slightly. And it's one of those sort of things that the Middle-earth team can't help themselves with. They want to include every last nugget of background to make sure that they're being as true to the source material and the sort of hopes and dreams of the fans as they can. And so, yeah, Merry and Pippin, slightly bigger than average. Somebody noticed all my
prend un barbier et un jardinier.
Having a bit of fun with that sort of thing.
De l'entretien.
Is part of what the Hobbit community really enjoy. And I can't wait to see some of those guys.
De l'entretien.
We've been in a
on va laisser passer celle-là.
To get face-to-face and play games in lots of places around the world. And I know that there's a few events coming up on the 2021 schedule, and if everything is back to normal, I could see me taking Treebeard and some friends to one of the events at some point.
Nous reste quoi?
Some orcs on there.
Underworld.
I remember back in
peut-être
like 2003 and 4, maybe that far back.
BOS.
Even then, Treebeard was a force to be reckoned with on the tabletop, wasn't he? I think. For as long as there's been a Treebeard in games.
On a du pain sur la planche. Non. Non, arrête ça tout de suite, Alex. On repart pas sur le million de blagues sylvanettes que vous avez sorties sur Facebook l'autre jour. On repart pas ça. On repart pas là-dessus.
Served ably with the existent metal model for a while, but
je refuse.
He got a massive bump in the newer edition, Armies of the Lord of the Rings, which was always pretty much within arm's reach of my desk here. But he's got heroic actions that he can use. He has the awesome bludgeon ability, which is quite literally if you're in a fight and you're surrounded,
je vais être obligé de demander à Nightbot de time out.
Instead of striking those normally, you can pick up one of the things that was fighting you and use them to whack all the other things.
Devoir dire à Nightbot de watcher les puns
and as long as the thing doesn't
de Sylvanette ou de Ent.
So grab an orc captain and just wail on all the other orcs around you. And it's super fun. It's the sort of rule where it is good in a game. It is tactically useful.
Une chance que c'était pas une preview de nain.
It's just a hoot. You grab the biggest thing and crump him into all the other
quite morale breaking, I guess, for your opponents as well. If they've just charged in their orc hero, they're like, oh, I'm gonna use my mic. Oh no, wait, I'm a beak stick now.
Somebody has asked how big is it compared to the existing.
No, stop it.
I couldn't tell you exactly because I haven't got my hands on one yet. I saw one while it was being sculpted digitally, but they have been very careful to make it as true to the scale that you see in the movies as ever before. And bear in mind that whilst that was definitely true of the original models that were made for Lord of the Rings, the bigger things were being made in metal at that time, and so it wasn't always completely possible. So I think he's bigger, and I'm not sure on the size of the base. It might be in the article that goes on warhammercommunity.com. If not, it will be revealed in due time. You'll get all the little facts and bits of information, and you'll be able to get your hands on the mightiest Ent in Fangorn. Raph is whispering in our ears that it is 1 minute to go before the next segment. Any other Treebeard-related fact, or indeed, if you've got a pun, I'm all ears.
Non, il a demandé des puns lui aussi.
Non. We've seen a lot of really nice reinventions of Adam
Troll, goddammit.
Back 20 years, the miniatures back then that came out were incredible, but you can see from how plastic technology has moved on. You look at things like Theoden and Eomer and Gandalf and some of the plastics that we've seen. The quality now of the miniatures and the true representation of what was in those films.
Adam Trunk, arrête d'encourager Alex.
I'm looking at them going, I just
Ça suffit, on passe à autre chose.
And to kind of try my skills. There's something quite satisfying about taking something you know what it looks like. You can see the film. You can kind of put the film on in the background as you paint it, pause it at the moments where you want the details, and just try and recreate it as faithfully as possible. It's almost quite a different painting style to the way I normally do it, which is I just kind of throw colours at it and try and be bold and brash and make it exciting. Trying to be true to something more photorealistic is
a little earthier and more realistic is definitely there. I've enjoyed the fact that they've essentially revisited in many ways the greatest hits, some of the most iconic characters and iconic sort of beasts and things from the movies, which is fantastic for newcomers to the hobby. You're often drawn to the thing which you remember most from, the lore or the movies or whatever.
He's got some of the best moments, hasn't he? Like smashing down the walls of Isengard or something, or some of the best lines, some of the most quotable.
Yeah, absolutely.
Stuff
Anytime someone's trying to rush you, you can say to Raph, who's asking us to move on, let's not be too hasty. And there we are. But in this case, a little haste would not be a bad thing. Of course, we have another preview just around the corner. Raph, hit it.
Underworld. Oh, Slaves to Darkness. Avec un Chaos Sorcerer Lord. Ooh. Nice. Cool. Please. No. On a les Kagras Ravagers. Nice.
The chat said it better. People screaming, those are beautiful models. Eddie, new stuff for Underworlds. What can you tell us?
Yeah, so we know that there is a new season of Warhammer Underworlds landing with us very soon before the end of the year. So, in the next few weeks. This is the first Warband expansion to Diachasm, and you can see already that these are absolutely amazing miniatures. Every Warband, it seems, that we've seen for Warhammer Underworld has just been a great collection of incredible archetypal miniatures for their faction, and I think this is no exception. These are the Ravagers. They are a force of slaves to darkness, chaos warriors, and I think in some ways these are like the most chaos warriors I think I've ever seen. They are like every inch the black iron armored killers that have typified the forces of chaos in fantasy for as long as I can remember in Warhammer. There's loads of beautiful details on them, but it's almost hard to pick a favorite out of those four.
Yeah, somebody in chat has shouted, and I will assume it is shouting because it's block caps. Is that Slambo? I've got to admit, Kragan, his name is.
Is that Slambo?
Is, in my opinion, an instant classic. It's very redolent of the classic Slambo miniature, which many older grognards can remember.
Female Chaos Warrior.
And what a pose! Just fantastic, menacing.
Peut-être, mais les visages de femelles sont tellement durs à reconnaître chez Games Workshop. C'est une femme.
So, Underworld is the ultimate competitive miniatures game.
Parce qu'à part ça, t'es habillé pas mal comme le reste. Hein?
Yeah, so this warband sits kind of at a crossroads of lots of different abilities, so that they're pretty tough, they're pretty durable. They have a lot of flexibility.
Sorcerer Lord est très cool.
Can dish out the pain, so that they are a really good all-round warband. And you can see there already some of the hints about what this warband might do. They obviously look pretty hard to kill. You can see that kind of lots of shield. You've got big shields. They're heavily armored. You've got magic in there as well. So you've got a magic user. So this is very much a kind of toolbox warband with lots of different ways that they can play. The warband is led by that character that you can see there, second from the right, and she is actually the sister of the mage. So there's a kind of family dynamic there, I suppose, where you've got the warrior and the mage, two sisters, and then you've got the kind of the bruisers, I suppose, the two chaos warriors on the extreme left and right. I think one of the things for me about these in terms of the miniatures is that they look like the artwork of Chaos Warriors that I remember from the 90s, the 2000s, in books like that Warriors of Chaos or Hordes of Chaos book. They look like absolutely brutal, like merciless killers. But the details on them are just incredible. Like we've seen some of the Start Collecting Slaves to Darkness box has obviously got some great miniatures in it, and I think these go one beyond that, to give you some really characterful extra additions, really dynamic poses, and they just look glorious. I think they're going to, whether you want to include these in as a Warhammer Underworlds warband in their own right, and obviously you absolutely can, or you want to include these in a Chaos Warrior army, they're going to look great.
Yeah, I think you've hit on so many things I want to sort of peel. My first thing is that you mentioned the familial relationship. I love that there's lore underpinning this warband. Underworlds is at its heart, a game to be played in sort of a match play competitive environment, but there's still a story that sort of sits sort of underneath its foundations, and I think it's really nice that the family that slays together stays together. And then you've pointed out how iconic the models are.
Non, je les trouve vraiment cool. Ben, je veux dire, j'ai le Slaves to Darkness Start Collecting, là, les Chaos Warriors sont insane, là, fait qu'eux autres aussi sont dans la même lignée, là, très 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 cool. Mais le Chaos Sorcerer Lord là, est vraiment super beau. Surtout comparé à le Chaos Sorcerer Lord qu'on a à pied, là, celui-là est tellement plus dynamique.
You talked about the utility way. I've heard these described when I went to do a little bit of finding out as an aggro warband, very hard hitting.
Les poses et tout, ils ressemblent aux bonhommes du Start Collecting. Oui, c'est sûr. Clairement, ils sont pareils comme ceux du Start Collecting, à part ça. Puis même ceux du Start Collecting ont beaucoup de détails dessus, là, donc je pense qu'ils sont assez semblables pour ça. Là.
Which sounds really cool.
Ça va coûter cher faire des gros teams de 20.
Ouais,
mais là, si tu veux juste ceux-là, mais ceux du Start Collecting font la job, là, puis t'en as 10 dedans, fait que ça se monte assez bien. Là. Les Knights du Start Collecting sont très beaux, mais zéro pratique, pas de bannière, pas d'instrument. Ouais, j'ai converti une bannière, moi, pour les Knights. T'as pas le choix du weapon non plus. Tu peux les proxy puis les jouer avec le weapon que tu veux. Mais t'as pas le choix du weapon sur le modèle.
Literally desecrate it. Boot it over, burn it down.
M'a acheté pour le sorcier, ouais, ben ça me titille, là. Effectivement. Ça va prendre un warband de Sons of Bane.
I have to give a massive shout out to whichever miniature designer in the Warhammer
Arman Crusher.
The tip of the staff for the sorcerer, whose name has just escaped me. But I think it's Zarsha. But if you look at the 8-pointed star, the fire doesn't look like it's connected to anything, and it's because it's really cleverly connected at the very back as it sort of the flames drift up. I love little elements of that where they use negative space to create really evocative and exciting thematic effects on miniatures.
A great opportunity there for painters as well. Anytime you've got like little bits of fire or flame or something, if you want a model to show off your
fait que on a eu droit à un petit teaser de Chameleon Skink dans l'autre preview, mais on revient pas à la charge avec les Séraphons malheureusement.
10 or 10 years back.
On y va avec Slaves to Darkness.
But obviously this is now a female sorcerer rather than a sorceress. And it's nice to see a mix of male and female characters in the warband as well for Chaos. We always knew that was the case, and we're starting to see that in the model range now.
Yeah, and I have the question, do you suppose that the horns on the sorcerer's head were once part of a helmet and they've grown into the head, or vice versa? I don't know.
I think
these are the questions I need answered.
Whenever you've got Chaos stuff like this, it's probably best not to ask those questions too deeply. There's bits of... One of the things I like about Chaos in the
warband t'as 2 pieds, that's...
characters... mutations start to kind of mirror their aspirations and their darkest desires. So you see things like in Warhammer 40,000, the Chaos Raptors, their claws start to...
Tu te rends compte en plus qu'il y a juste le Titanic Boulder Club à 2 dégâts, fait finalement t'es vraiment déçu de ta warband de Sons of Bane.
That will start to kind of have more hideous and hideous faces. Chaos is very cruel in its gifts in a kind of ironic sort of way. So quite possibly, who knows? Who knows?
Well, absolutely. So we are probably at the point where we should come back to see our faces while we tie up this section. I don't know. Boom. Sorry, people. We're not quite as pretty as the Chaos Warriors, but we'll do. I think it's worth saying that Underworlds is one of the things about it that's really good, and I've had a few friends who've talked to me about this, is that we've tried to work out ways to sort of hobby on during this
Age of Sigmar,
curious
guys?
time that we've had this year. Underworlds plays really
On est-tu
well.
rendu à Age of Sigmar?
I've had a little dabble with Blood Bowl so far with this, but of course, because it's on a grid square, if you and your opponent have both got the same warbands, you can easily play and just track each other's movements and call it out, which is quite nice. And the other thing I think you touched on is that it's a brilliant way of just dipping your toe into an area of the mortal realms that you've not experienced so far. I did the Fire Slayers warband just because it looked cool. I've never ever played with it. I just wanted some chubby dwarfs with their hair on fire.
You could do far worse if you just want a really satisfying hobby project to go. I'm just going to paint up each of the Underworld's warbands. Each one's 3 to 5 miniatures, and maybe take a week or so to paint them up. But at the end of it, you have a great selection of different miniatures from across the mortal realms. And if there's one you particularly fancy painting, maybe that's your next army. I think just to end this section, with a quick reminder that Diachasm, the next installment in Warhammer Underworlds, it's on its way in the next few weeks. So if you're a Warhammer Underworlds fan, it's been delayed a little bit this year, what with all the kind of unusualness of 2020, but we'll still land very soon. And we know already that there's a great looking Slaanesh warband in there, there's a great looking Lumineth warband, and now we know there's a Chaos warband joining them as well. So the next season is already shaping up to be very exciting and tick a lot of those boxes of the kind of like, what about this warband that we haven't seen? We've had a little hint at the Seraphon as well. So a lot of the kind of, wouldn't it be great if we saw a Insert X warband of this army? We know we're getting, and I can't wait to see what the rest of the season brings. Yeah,
totally agree. There's a few people saying, when are we going to get to see X, Y, or Z? And maybe bemoaning the decadent pace at which we have taken our time. Well, why don't we do the next reveal, and we'll see where we end up.
Let's go. Oh yeah, baby. Come on.
No, not like that, you competent oaf. How hard is it to get my hand? It's almost perfect already. Why is it impossible to find decent help in these realms? Don't you know who I am?
Who are you?
I'm the most incredible, talented, deadly, and
magnificent
beautiful champion of chaos there has ever
Sigvald!
been. Now, I'm back.
Nice.
And I'm more magnificent than ever.
There he is. Woof. Damn! Oh boy! Woo! Oh shit, okay, nice. Bring beauty to the realms!
That was pretty wild. I love it. The chat has gone absolutely bananas. We told you this would be
chat has gone wild.
Preview with some Decadence and Decay. We started off with the Decay in Warhammer 40,000, and now we've gone full Decadence.
Hot damn!
With Warhammer Age of Sigmar. Sigvald the Magnificent. Eddie, what do you reckon?
Yeah, so this is Sigvald, the Prince of Chaos, the Magnificent. He probably has a list of titles as long as your arm, but this is one of the most iconic characters from was returned in glorious new plastic. So as you can see on the screen there, this was the Sigvald the Magnificent that we know and remember from Warhammer Fantasy Battle, and even back then when this miniature came out, this miniature in metal, I remember being amazed by this incredible paint scheme.
Wallet.
Very different sort of looking Chaos Lord than we'd seen
I can only get
Chaos
so erected.
I think Adam, you had a chance to look at this up close at the time, didn't you?
Well, so it's worth just a little note. This model is so iconic, and I think
les warriors de Slaanesh en armure,
both miniature and paint job by the Heavy Metal team, as one of the greatest of all time. I photographed this miniature years ago using a scanback machine, which essentially does an unthinkable resolution, and it took me to 12 times resolution before I could get to the gradation and the shield with the blending. It's just extraordinary. And then so you just wonder how it could possibly be topped, how a miniature with such great lore and everything, the expectation from the fans could possibly raise the bar, and here we are. If Raph slides us to there we go. Boom. It's
so the new model is absolutely beautiful. This is one of the most iconic, most impressive miniatures in the entire Age of Sigmar range, and that is saying something because there are some doozies.
Amazing,
sérieux. You can look at every element of it from that original miniature has been captured and accentuated and kind of increased in scale, in size, and grandeur, in elegance. The sword, the shield, the helm, even the base is incredible.
Yeah, and there's so much to talk about with regards to the model that has inspired and informed this from the world that was into the mortal realms now. This champion of Slaanesh. The shield is essentially the same design.
50 ou 40 son socle. D'après moi, c'est peut-être plus du 50.
The sword. If you look at the old model, there's like a serpent wrapped around the hilt. That's now become part of the metal of the hilt, sort of. Created inside the detailing. The armor is super baroque and has so much going on. He's got like there's a close-up shot we'll see in a moment which shows us some of those incredible details. Here we go. Thank you, Raph. Like it's just extraordinary. And I'm not your natural Slaanesh follower. I typically play the good guy.
You can see yourself giving into temptation at this point.
Well, it's just so very, very good. He's the sort of model that I think we're going to be seeing in Golden Demon painting competitions.
Il est tellement badass là.
Yeah, there's lots of other elements in there as well that hint at some of the wider Slaaneshi range as well. So I think the horns on that are reminiscent of things like the Keeper of Secrets.
Absolutely.
You could look at the way the armor is very, very different from the armor that we've seen on things like Slaves to Darkness. It has a very different kind of aesthetic, and I think one of the things we've started to see with Age of Sigmar and the Slaanesh stuff is that it now has clear distinction between, it's not just like chaos in a Slaaneshi color scheme. It has a real aesthetic of its own, which is very elegant, that kind of muscular armored look, all those kind of like little details that are kind of decadent but still like a little bit sinister. So you look at the model and at a glance you're like, oh, there's a glorious hero in gold, he must be a good guy, right? And you start to look a little bit closer and you're like, oh no, there's some things about it that are a little bit unsettling, or the chaosness of it is quite subtle compared to something like the rampant mutation of Tzeentch or Nurgle or something.
It's the subversion of expectations with Slaanesh in general, but especially with this model, the Golden Champion with his flowing locks. He's at face value, he's everything you expect from a champion of light and goodness. And yet actually he's amongst the very most depraved and evil champions of chaos that there ever was, and reborn for the mortal realms.
Just take a moment to look at that paint scheme as well. Like, I know you're talking about that original paint scheme on that miniature, and I agree is phenomenal, but the paint job on this is just godly, right?
It's
like,
sublime. Look, the chat is actually exploded with people saying, who did the paint job, and can we get them to explain more? Well, I off the top of my head, I can't remember who the painter is, but I think that there's a nugget of an idea in there, people who've asked for it. We should get the painter to come on either to one of our Warhammer TV shows live, or we could get him to help us with an article for
vraiment bel job de peinture,
talk about some of the techniques and things that they used to bring this sublime miniature to life.
Super beau.
Yeah, I think it's one of those models which
comme il a dit tantôt, je pense qu'on va le voir dans des
whatever army he's in, I'm in, right?
Les gens qui vont l'utiliser pour faire leur Golden Demon.
There are certain miniatures in the Warhammer range where you can love it so much that you build your entire army,
le visage est vraiment sa coche. Les corps pour montrer qu'il est rendu vraiment plus là, il a été ramené par Slaanesh, mais il faut quand même qu'il soit magnificent. Il est quand même beau, il est pas trop muté là, il y a juste des petites cornes comme ça, puis le reste c'est quand même genre
comparison to the
la décadence, la beauté. No?
Yeah, and I think we're at risk of, we've enjoyed that model so much, we're at risk of forgetting the other awesome things we saw inside that video. There were essentially 2 new units for Slaanesh armies in the Mortal Realms, and they both deserve a look at. Which ones are these, Eddie?
So these are the Twin Souls. These are effectively warriors of Slaanesh who have a soul which is paired with a demon. So you can see that kind of element of demonetness kind of coming through in the faces. And they have a range of variously wicked-looking weapons. They are a kind of eclectic mix, so that they're kind of unified obviously by the color scheme and the palette.
Vraiment nice, le miroir, callback du miroir.
Beyond that, like the faces, the mutations, the weapons they've chosen to wield are all very unique and kind of excessive in a very sort of Slaaneshi sort of way. They are, torturous elite killers of Slaanesh. And you can imagine these guys marching to battle alongside Sigvald. If you've got him leading the front of your glorious host, these guys give you a unit to march alongside him and give them the backup.
Yeah, absolutely.
The
other unit which you saw in there are the Myrmidesh Painbringers, and here they are.
Myrmidesh Painbringers
ever made. I'm not gonna prevaricate. I just think they look absolutely brilliant. The helmets are outstanding. The shields are next level. The shield, which has got the demon face in it, really screams of some of that old sort of black and white style Slaves to Darkness artwork we've seen in the past.
Oh,
just incredible models.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that's been really nice in the Age of Sigmar is that we've started to see
comme
what
ça
was
sur le haut,
previously Chaos Warriors.
Le casque, l'armure est malade.
The extremes
ça
of
va
their
looker
various
sur une
deities that
table,
they're in
ça.
service to. So we saw it first with Khorne, with things like
que ça
the
va
Warriors,
looker sur la table.
and then we saw it with Nurgle and the kind of blessed.
Je regrette d'avoir vendu mon Slaanesh.
And then with Tzeentch and the Zangors and the cultists and things like that.
Je regrette déjà.
We see it now with Slaanesh, and it has a very different kind of aesthetic. You can take the kind of Chaos Warrior archetype and layer up the kind of decadence and excess that Slaanesh is associated with, and you can see where these models have come from. And much like Sigvald, they start off with this kind of like, well, from far away they look like glorious golden heroes, and you start to look a bit closer and you're like, well, there's some very sinister things going on there. They've got kind of those helmets that mirror the symbol of Slaanesh itself. They've got those kind of demonic faces hidden in amongst the various shields and armor plates and things like that. But the kit looks like it's incredible. Like these are two different kits from. Sorry, this is one kit that makes two different units, and I'm already looking at them going like, that bit looks amazing. If I build them like the other kit, I can take that helmet and maybe use it in some Chaos 40k things.
The Lord of Pain va aller avec eux.
One of the things I want to do is see how those Space Marines right away. I've seen somebody say, and it's a really interesting observation actually that I had noticed. The shield second from the right does look quite a lot like the shield that Valkyr the Bloody has, which is quite an interesting observation. I'm going to have to go and do some comparisons.
So Valkyr the Bloody Shield is
exactly it's
made from the head
of
a Slaanesh demon. So it's perfectly possible that is in fact a possessed shield, and there's a demonic entity kind of stuck inside it. That would be right up their street in terms of the sort of thing they might decide.
And the sort of the weapon nerd in me can't help but look at the detail sometimes that the miniatures designers put into these things. If you look at the shield on the very far right, it's been made. It's got the sort of leather padded cushioning for the arm to slide through, and sort of gripped by the sort of the brace. Everything about that just looks like they've put so much care and attention into making this thing look great.
Yeah, I think the nice thing about that is that if you're a Chaos Warrior of Khorne or something, you probably don't care about like a cushion.
Probablement, oui, ça doit être
like, give me something to hold on to.
Un
I'm
double
just going to bash
kit.
this into someone's face as
Probablement,
soon as I can.
oui.
But if you're a champion of Slaanesh, you'd be
On n'a
like,
pas de confirmation,
I want
là,
an
mais...
elegant, cushioned interior to my shield, so I can feel the luxury of the leather that as I chop through my enemies.
Leather from a Lumineth cat or something.
Something like that. Some obscure creature that has to be like skinned and treated before it can be laid inside your shield.
Yeah, so somebody said, what were they called again?
Oui, ils l'ont dit, ok.
Je l'ai pas entendu. Myrmidesh Painbringers, who are the guys with the big helmets on, and then you have the Silveresh Twin Souls, who are the ones whose faces are being sort of warped by the demons that are inside of them. And they're part of the Slaanesh range, which will accompany Sigvald the Magnificent.
Donc on a les Twin Souls, puis on a les
two new kits, which should look amazing.
Painbringers.
Yeah, and I think what it does for Slaanesh as well is that what we've seen a lot recently in the Mortal Realms, Slaanesh armies have very much been based around keepers of secrets and lots of fast demony stuff, and that's a perfectly fine way to run an army. If that's how you want to roll, then by all means do it. But what Sigvald and these units do is they basically give you a very different way to approach.
Il doit déjà avoir du monde sur Internet qui cherche
you can have a glorious golden champion in the middle, kind of ranks and ranks of elite.
Mais là, ça va leur prendre un nouveau battle tone.
Which gives you a very different way to play, or when you can combine with the rest of the
si c'est juste 3 units, est-ce que juste un Broken Realms va rajouter les War Scrolls?
Totally. A couple of questions I might be able to field. It's one kit that makes two.
J'ai hâte de voir le retail price à Sigvald.
He is definitely
reste le côté de Decay, on l'a eu. Je pense le côté de Decay, c'était Dead Guard au début.
That might mean for another time. And there was something else. Oh, is Sigvald part of Demons of Slaanesh or part of the Head Knights of Slaanesh?
So Head Knights of Slaanesh is the catch-all term for all Slaanesh across the Mortal Realms. There is not quite the distinction maybe that there was in the old world between the mortal followers and the demonic followers, because the mortal realms are so saturated with chaos magic that demons can generally like trot around the place quite happily. So it's fairly common to have unified armies of demons and mortals, as you see in Khorne armies and Nurgle armies and now Slaanesh armies as well.
There we are. Right. Well, I think we're approaching the end of all things. Is that fair to say?
Yes,
oui, Sigvald, Luke, on va aller le rechercher après.
Right. I think
si vous avez manqué des choses, partez pas après la fin du preview, je vais retourner sur le site, puis on va regarder les modèles qu'ils ont montrés là.
On
a-tu un petit dernier preview, pensez-vous qu'on a un petit teaser à la fin?
With Codex Supplement Dark Angels, Codex Dracari,
il fait un recap là.
Necromunda with House of Artifice and a new kit which does the Neotex and the
Archaeotex.
Thank you, Eddie. Into the Middle-earth strategy battle game with Treebeard, possibly the most exciting new plastic monster I've ever seen for Middle-earth, and his 2 little Hobbit companions. We went into Underworlds with the fantastic new Ravagers warband, and then stopped by the most magnificent fodder of chaos there ever done was. It's been a pretty wild ride.
Yeah, it's been good. And if you want to have a closer look at any of the things that we've shown you in the preview today,
minimum à parler. Ouais, non, je pense qu'ils s'enlignent pour la fin, eux autres.
And you can check out all of the close-up shots of those miniatures.
Je pense pas qu'on ait à moins qu'il y ait un petit teaser pour Blood Bowl, mais
on
est pas mal à la fin du preview.
Well worth a visit to the website, even if you've watched the whole preview, because there might be some nuggets of extra information in there as well.
Yeah, and it saves you having to do like a grainy screen grab off of the video in the replay to see what they look like. There'll be nice, crisp pictures for you to enjoy. I think what remains is for us to thank you all for coming and joining us from wherever you are in the world. Your comments, your company, your enthusiasm has all been massively appreciated. And to tell you that there will be another preview relatively soon, the beginning of December, I believe, so early part of December, where we're going to be shining a light on a lot of things to do with the Black Library, interviewing, I think Wade Price is going to interview some Black Library authors for us, and we're going to have a real spotlight on the literary arm of Warhammer.
Yeah, if you like Black Library fiction, if you're a fan of Warhammer lore, definitely worth tuning in for the next preview in early December.
Absolutely. So, in that case, I think it's time to sign off. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. It has been lovely to have you with us. Thank you, Eddie, absolute wisdom on all the things I don't know. And your absolute wisdom on all the things I don't know.
No problem at all.
Whoa.
You say that. Raph behind the scenes, who has made the technology work so ably. But most importantly, all of you out there, have a lovely afternoon. We'll see you again very soon. Goodbye.
Fini. Le preview est fini. Ok. Broken Realms, Sigvald, ça aurait été hot. On n'a pas de confirmation, malheureusement. Je vais vous popper. On va retourner voir les modèles. Webcam mini. Boom. Fait que tout ça, c'était le stock de 40K. Les livres, Crusade, Plague Purge, on a eu Dracari, blablabla. Dark Angels. On a eu une nouvelle house pour Necromunda. House of Artifice. Les modèles étaient quand même assez cool. Qu'est-ce qui se passe? J'ai-tu reparti un preview à quelque part? Ouais, j'ai reparti le preview ici. Ok, on va faire ça. Mais avec Slaanesh elle-même qui est sur la base libérée, j'ai hâte de voir où Sigvald va faire son entrée dans la story. Eux étaient cool. On a eu Middle-earth qui était pas rien quand même. Le Ent était quand même assez badass. Le modèle est super hot. Donc ça c'était bien. On a eu Dire Chasm. Les Warband de Chaos Warrior. Avec un Chaos Sorcerer Lord, donc la Warband est très très cool. Et Path to Excess. Sigvald. On regarde ça encore.
No, not like that, you incompetent oaf. How hard is it to get my hair out? It's almost perfect already. Why is it impossible to find decent help in these realms? Don't you know who I am? I'm the most incredible, talented, deadly, and beautiful champion of chaos there has ever been. Now, I'm back, and I'm more magnificent than ever.
Damn. Sigvald, il look, man. Oh. 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 Ça, c'est nice. Attention. Poup, 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 poup. Toute qu'une transformation. Hein? Non, mais le modèle est insane. Là. Le modèle est insane. La petite musique est insane aussi, oui. L'armure me fait capoter. L'agencement des couleurs, là. Super hot. Super beau. Pimp My Sigvald. Le preview est vraiment malade. Oh, oui, absolument. Le Sigvald boss est parfait. Puberty hit hard. À l'échelle, on dirait qu'il est sur une 60. Ouais, je sais pas, hein. 50 ou 60, probablement, là, quelque chose de même. Parce que quand on le voit à la fin du vidéo avec les autres, là... Tu sais, ça doit être du 32, eux autres. Eux doivent être du 32. Fait que ça commence à être assez gros, là. Regardez la grosseur. Hein. Ouais, 50. Ouais, les autres 32 ou 40. D'après moi, ils sont plus 32. Mais bon, peut-être c'était du 40 aussi pour les autres, mais ça ressemble à du 32, ça, sérieux, là. Ça ressemble à du 32. Un Demon Prince, c'est sur quelle taille? Demon Prince, c'est-tu du 60? Demon Prince. Demon Prince. 60. Demon Prince, c'est sur du 60. Ouais, c'est ça. Fait que ça pourrait peut-être être du 60 pour lui aussi. Ouais. Ça, c'est les... On les a ici le nom. Les Myrmidesh Painbringers. Myrmidesh Painbringers. Très nice, là, des warriors de Slanesh, là, vraiment, là, en grosse armure avec le casque. Le casque est super beau, avec... ça rappelle toute l'iconographie de Slanesh, là. Les shields, l'armure est malade, là. Les détails, là, les petits détails avec les gems un peu partout, les breloques. Myrmidesh. Oui, malheureusement, ça fait partie du nom. Myrmidesh Painbringers. Donc, très beau modèle. Vraiment, là. Sur la coche. Puis, on a eu les Simbaresh. Simbaresh Twin Souls. Qui ont fait un pacte avec des Lesser Demons. Donc, ils partagent leur corps avec une démonette. Donc, c'est pour ça que leur visage, ils commencent à avoir des traits démoniaques un peu, mais ça reste des mortals. Avec la genre de bannière dans le dos, celle-là est vraiment très cool. Le long fouet. Ah, vraiment, là. Son sacoche aussi. Sa face est un peu derpy, celle-là, là. Je sais pas si je pouvais l'avoir plus proche. Non, je peux pas, ben. Mais sa face est un petit peu derpy. Moi, personnellement, lui, je l'ai fait Joker. Moi, personnellement, c'est les Painbringers, là, mes préférés, là, des gros warriors de même, là, sont vraiment sa coche, là. Mais j'aime quand même les autres. Les autres sont beaux, mais je trippe un peu moins sur le fait, justement, qu'il y ait une face derpy à moitié démoniaque, là. Mais bon, celui-là est déjà un peu moins pire, là. Mais j'aime quasiment mieux ça. Celui-là est badass. Son masque est badass, comme ça, là, à moitié caché, là. Mais des gros warriors de même avec le shield, là. Ouf. Ça, c'est sa coche. Ça, c'est sa coche. Personnellement. 2 points de vie chaque, sûrement. Probablement. Il va falloir attendre de voir les détails pour les règles, mais sérieux, c'était vraiment hot. Puis Sigvald est juste badass. Sigvald est juste complètement badass. Sigvald est juste insane. Ouais, fait que c'est ça. Qu'est-ce que vous avez pensé du preview en général? On peut parler du preview global là, avec tous les autres systèmes de jeu ou juste parler du preview là, de Age of Sigmar. Là. Je sais pas, là, 40K, ça avait de l'air un peu décevant. Là, juste montrer des livres au final. Puis un codex, I guess. Là, pour ceux qui attendaient un codex, ils ont eu Dark Angels. Tu sais, à part Slanesh, Pretty Underwhelming Preview, je pense que le reste est un peu, ouais. Un peu poche. Je pense que tu regrettes de m'avoir vendu ton Slanesh. Oui, je l'ai dit tantôt, je le regrette. Je pense que tu vas avoir bien du fun, toi, avec mon Slanesh. Necromunda, bon, si ça vous intéresse, c'est tel que tel. Les nouveaux modèles sont quand même badass, là. J'ai bien aimé les modèles de Necromunda. Même chose pour Middle Earth. Le modèle est sa coche avec Pépine, Mérine. Le Ent est vraiment très cool. Dire Chasm, je pense que les modèles sont vraiment beaux aussi. Là. La Warband est sa coche. Le Chaos Sorcerer Lord me titille vraiment. Là. Il est vraiment, vraiment très beau. Fait que peut-être un futur achat. Puis, je pense que le gagnant du preview, ça ne peut qu'être que Age of Sigmar. Là, je veux dire, plein de nouveaux modèles, Slanesh, un nouveau Sigvald. C'était juste trop cool. Là. C'était juste trop cool. Donc, ouais. Non, c'était vraiment sa coche. Ça. Cool. Cool. Ouais, je garde mon cash pour Sigvald, ouais. Je pense que Sigvald va être très populaire, même si t'as pas une armée Slanesh, là, je pense que Sigvald va être super populaire comme modèle, là. Juste à avoir dans sa collection, là. Enfin, du Mortal pour vrai, c'est juste toujours mieux. Je trouve. Oui, il y a beaucoup de gens qui préfèrent les Mortal Followers aux Demon Followers. Là. Puis Slanesh était dû depuis tellement longtemps, là, donc cool. Enfin, on va avoir des Mortal Followers pour Slanesh. Probablement qu'ils vont être Battle Line aussi, d'une certaine manière, parce que de ce que j'ai compris, les Hellstriders sont plus Battle Line avec la nouvelle sortie de la box de Shadow and Pain. Là. Donc ça va prendre des nouveaux Battle Lines si on veut jouer juste Mortal. Sigvald, je le verrais bien avec du Gold Chrome pour vrai versus du Non-Metallic Metal. Ouais, ça va être un beau modèle. Là. Ça va être vraiment sa coche. Tu gardes les Daemons pour du Summon, ouais, carrément. Non, c'était bien. Vraiment trippé. C'était très cool. Fait que... cool. Fait que merci à tout le monde d'avoir été là. Merci à tout le monde d'être venu voir le preview. On était une bonne gang. J'ai trouvé ça cool de jaser avec vous autres, réagir au preview. J'espère que vous avez apprécié. Si c'est pas déjà fait, considérez lâcher un petit follow pour le channel. Si vous voulez revenir voir des vidéos ou des streams avec nous, on fait un talk show tous les mardis soirs. Puis, dommage qu'ils referont pas les Rail Striders avec le bot. C'est presque ça qu'ils les update pas. Ouais, c'est ça. Malheureusement. Peut-être un jour, malheureusement. Ouais. Battle Line, c'est un Lord of Pain General, ou Sigvald, ou peu importe, là. Ces héros-là, effectivement, ça les prend Battle Line. Fait que merci à tout le monde. Je vous revois mardi soir pour le double tour, où on se fait un épisode spécial lore, spécial Broken Realms Moratti. On fait un review sur le lore au complet. Donc, ça va être un spoiler alert si vous n'avez pas déjà lu ou entendu le lore de Broken Realms. Et je rappelle que le week-end d'après, on a une grosse fin de semaine de streaming. On révèle les listes et les joueurs pour le Homehammer. Il va y avoir la baston EOS. Et le dimanche, ben, c'est le tournoi, le Homehammer. La finale va être streamée en live ici. Donc, on a déjà nos 8 joueurs d'inscrits. Il me reste qu'à recevoir les listes cette semaine. Là. Donc, j'ai bien hâte de pouvoir faire ça avec vous. Bien hâte de pouvoir vous présenter ça. Fait que bonne journée à tout le monde. Puis, je vous dis à la prochaine. Ciao, bye!